But I really want to move on to sort of the importance of inclusion here, because there was a study that was done, and I read an article sort of about it, and I read around it, that found that the percentage of undergraduate and postgraduate STEM students who were deaf or had a serious hearing impairment stayed at just 0.3% between 2007 and 8 and 2018 and 19 in the UK. And in the UK, 1.3% of the population are severely or profoundly deaf. So 1.3% of the population is deaf, let's say, and 0.3% of uni students between 2007 and 2018 were deaf. That is a massive disparity, right? You would expect to see roughly 1.3%. If not, what barriers are there for deaf people? There are obviously a lot of barriers in place, at sort of going to university and studying STEM for deaf people. And, there are some that you might not think about. So obviously, not having sort of interpreters is one thing. That is an issue.
That's a big one. The amount of deaf friends that will be like, well, I turned up to this shoot or this thing or whatever, and there wasn't an interpreter there, so therefore I couldn't participate. Yeah. It will literally cut off that participation for them. They can't.
Exactly. But that's just one part as well, right? Like, and that's the sort of not the most obvious one, but that's probably the one that your mind would jump to immediately. But another part of that as well is that think about sort of BSL, think about sign language, think about how it works, right? Do you think there are going to be signs, like simple signs, for the complex words that are used in science?
No,
there weren't.
I wouldn't be surprised if it had to be finger spelled or like shortened in some way.
Exactly. And finger spelling is so. I mean, if you want to explain, go ahead, what fingerspelling is.
Oh, fingerspelling is just where you take the BSL alphabet, so like A, B, C, D, all of your five vowels are on your fingers here, because you've got 5 fingers. It makes sense, A, E, I, O, U. Anyway, when you're fingerspelling, that is literally just spelling out the word using BSL, but that takes a lot longer than if this is a sign for like work, right? So I could do work, or I could go W-O-R-K, but that takes so much longer.
Yes, fingerspelling takes a long time. And if you're in a lecture and someone's got to fingerspell something, and not only have you got to wait for them to finish spelling it, you've also got to be spelling out the word in your head. Imagine if, I was giving a lecture, I was doing a SCI GUYS episode, and instead of saying mitochondria, I said, if we're talking about the powerhouse of the cell, it's the mitochondria. Right? You'd be like, okay, and by that point, I've already started talking it. Like, the lecturer is not waiting for the interpreter if you're lucky enough to have an interpreter. And, there are so many factors here, right? And what we need to remember is that none of this reflects on deaf people. Deaf people are not underrepresented because they're stupid, which is something that people think of deaf people.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
You can speak about your own experience here, but I think that honestly, people think of deaf people as being stupid because the way that we sort of measure intelligence in others often is in their ability to converse, right? And so if you've got any kind of disability or anything whatsoever that impacts your way to converse with other people, people will automatically see you as less intelligent, right?
And if you're deaf, your pronunciation or like your diction or like whatever, like the way you speak might just be different because that's how you hear sounds. Exactly. Yes. No, but I do completely agree with you. I think my parents had that worry about social stigmas when I was growing up around my deafness. I don't think anyone ever automatically assumed I was stupid, but...
You don't even need people to assume that you're stupid. It's just the little sort of subconscious ways that people interact. And again, these are things that we need to be conscious of, all of us, really. And I want to talk a little bit more about this. So, I've got this article here. You can go read it down in the description. But, people can wait months for the sort of accessibility sort of assistance that they need. You might not be able to have an interpreter in every lecture or a specialist note taker. And there is no reason for this, by the way. The universities are taking enough bloody money that they can pay an interpreter. They should be able to pay an interpreter to be in any of the classes that they want. I'm sorry. Why don't you just cut down one little bit of spending on something so you've got an interpreter in whatever class you need? Because like realistically, it's 1.3% of students, right? That's enough to get a set of interpreters,
Easily.
right? You know, on top of that, so on top of the not being able to actually have interpreters, on top of the signing, you know, there's just the stigma against, you know, being deaf, and that will obviously affect people. But what I wanted to sort of bring it back to, or sort of steer towards, is this more sort of positive story, because we spoke about how, you know, if you're in a lecture and even if you've got an interpreter sort of signing, you will still have to sort of finger spell things out. And so what a lot of people have done is, or some people have done, is created a whole bunch of new signs for this. And I wanted to do this as an episode of SCI Guys years ago, back when we started, because there's a guy named Liam McMulkin, and he was an undergrad at the University of Dundee, which is where I'm from. He actually studied with one of my friends, and he created a whole bunch of new signs because he was like, I think the issue was he was having to, you know, have his interpreter fingerspell stuff out, and he's like, let's just make these signs for these words. And again, it's this sort of thing of like, imagine not having a word for something. Do you know what I mean? Like having a concept that you can spell out, but not having like a word for it. That's, I guess, somewhat comparable to not having a sign for it, right?
Literally, yeah.
And like, you know, if you then have a sign, you're then able to personally sort of understand the concept more because you've got a thing to apply it to. So he developed over 100 new signs, and those were accepted into BSL. So this one undergrad dude, he just went ahead and he was like, okay, this isn't working for me. Let's make this work. And it was sort of accepted into the actual language.
That's really cool.
It's brilliant, right?
Go on, Liam. Was his name Liam?
His name is Liam.
Go on, Liam.
I've got a quote from him here as well. He said, I feel really happy because I know from my own experience how difficult it is to learn during lectures. Now the new signs have spread, I feel it will be better for future students. He went on to study for a master's degree in regenerative medicine research at the University of Dundee, and the University of Dundee is really good for, you know, certain things. Apparently they've got a comprehensive plan to ensure that they are inclusive and supportive of British Sign Language users. That's just in the UK, but in America, for ASL, they've also made a bunch of new signs. So I tried to learn the sign for DNA in ASL, which I'm gonna suck at this, right? But they created a whole bunch of new ones, but it's really great. So like, I think it's something along the lines of, yeah, it's like this.
I will audio describe.
So
Corey places two peace signs sort of next to each other like they're scissoring.
And then pulls them away from each other and twists at the same time.
And
so you go to scissor and then pull them away and then twist.
Yeah, so you twist them, you sort of rotate them 90 degrees. So if you're listening, let me just explain this to you. And if you're watching, you can watch and listen at the same time. So what I've got here is I've got two sort of peace signs, and they are, I guess, sort of perpendicular to one another and sort of intersecting like they're about to scissor, right? And then what I do is I pull them away and rotate them each 90 degrees. And that's supposed to sort of represent the DNA double helix.
Oh my
gosh. So it means DNA.
Now that makes so much sense.
And so obviously with ASL, it's the idea is that you can finger spell with one hand. So instead of having to, you know, do with one hand, like, you know, DNA or whatever, boom, that just one quick sign and you've got the sign for DNA. And this is what I love about sign languages, is that I feel like they work in a way that my brain likes to work, which is very visually with a concept.
Visual. I'm not gonna lie, I learned the sign for abortion the other day, and it's literally,
oh gosh,
it's
could you
very...
describe that for the audio?
Sorry, the sign for abortion is literally you get your hand as if it's going to grab something, and then it grabs where sort of your lower abdomen is. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah. Womb, it would be, yeah.
And then you grab it, and then you kind of pull a face of disgust, and you throw it. Yeah,
you
it's
need
kind
the
of
face of disgust.
A face of disgust.
That's so great.
It's sort of like.
Oh, that's great. Oh, because faces are important for
So when you're doing sign language, so the sign for job and work is the same, you know, it's this, which is the sign we described earlier.
Crossing over your hand.
The crossing over. Job and work are the same, but your lip reading is, the mouthing the word is important in terms of like the context.
It's so interesting.